So I had a really lovely conversation with my friend today. And I actually tried to record our conversation, but it didn't take. I really wish I could have. I need to remember every time I talk to her, I need to record, because our conversations between her and I lead to some marvelous material. But I wanted to make this recording real quick to try to rekindle what kind of came up in my conversation with her this afternoon, because I was explaining why I feel such a fire in me to shatter people's illusions of falsehood, spiritual falsehood. I don't know why that's such a mission in me, but it is. So I'm going to be broaching that topic much more in the future, because there's a lot of deception out there of people selling spiritual products of sorts, whether it be trips, whether it be selling of experiences, whether it be, I don't know, whatever it is. There's just people out there taking advantage of naive souls who may be just entering the path. I feel it's part of my duty and service to life to lay waste to some of the bullshit that's happening in those realms, to help keep people steered clear and much more true to themselves, because that's where they're going to find true progress. Just staying home and doing your homework. Just do your homework. Work on yourself. Understand the mechanisms that trigger thought and feeling and your reactions in the world. Understand those mechanisms. It's the only thing that's going to give you progress. So in our discussions with her, I was sharing with her this fire I feel inside. And I was trying to make a point, which I did in my last recording just briefly, about what I want to say to all of these people around the world who are, I don't know, creating spiritual retreats and this, that, and the other thing. You know, collecting money from travelers and come do this and come do that. So there's let me start with this. There's a law of life, my friends. This is a law of life that you do not want to cross. And that is, you do not ever want to seek any form of payment for rendering any service on the light. It is a violation of being a true student of the light. And there's a price to pay, karmically, especially for students in the light who charge money or any other kind of compensation for so-called spiritual training for others, or disseminating truth, because the truth is free. The highest truth of the universe is completely free. It is given freely by life. And no one has the right to seek a charge for this. And those that do will pay a price. And any true student of the light will already know of this. And therefore, people who are charging money are in one of two places. Either they're not a true student of the light and should have no business just trying to disseminate anything to others, or two, they know of this law and are willfully ignoring it, which is even worse. So, in connection with this, one of my favorite things that came to mind was, of course, beloved Jesus again. He's such a strong inspiration in my life, and as you know, if you've listened to my other things, I talk about him often. Because we need to see how he conducted himself, okay? And use him as what we measure everything else in life up to. If you are wise, you will do this. You will measure everything in your life upon what Jesus did and taught, because it will help you find your way. Because he left us a record of being that will not be surpassed for thousands of years. His teaching and the record of his conduct, the services he yielded to people, the power of the light that he wielded. There is nothing else we need to be doing in life but following his example. And until we attain something of the magnitude that he attained, we shouldn't be out there wandering, trying to gather people or souls or students upon ourselves. We have to become worthy. And look how he conducted himself. This is something I was sharing with my friend. It's like, because right now there's just so many people around the world, I don't know, just talking about so much random new age bullshit. And what they really need to be doing is just focusing on becoming like Jesus. And then I say to these people, once you become like Jesus, then go do these great deeds. Then draw the masses upon you. You will have no need for money at that point. You will be beyond the need of anything because it's all supplied to you freely by the universe, because the universe has found you worthy. Just become like Jesus first. Every one of us can do it. When he came and rendered his ministry, he didn't run around trying to get people to pay him money for healing, or try to teach them about some far off place or some ancient civilizations. He kept them all, everyone, in the moment. Look at his sermons on the mounts, all of his words he spoke. He spoke about finding the kingdom of heaven within. He kept everybody focused on the moment, on what they are right now, on their inheritance of being. And he taught them through parable of how to be what he was. There's no mysticism about it. It's so utterly practical. Every word he uttered was scientifically and mathematically provable by anybody who makes the effort and has ears to hear and eyes to see what he was trying to convey. And he did it completely free. He required nothing. He asked for nothing. And he was giving everything. And here's one other thing I want people to ponder. As they think about their life and what they're giving, is Jesus did not have to come back into embodiment. He had done enough work. He had done enough house cleaning in his previous embodiment not to require a return. But he did. He came back to render a final service, right? I've gone into this in my other videos. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I want you to think about one other thing, is that he was 13 or 15 years old. And he left his home countryside and traveled to the east, to the Orient at the time. Somewhere in India, maybe in China, other places. Where he went, he sat at the feet of masters greater than himself. For somewhere between 15 to 20 years, he sat at the feet of those greater than himself, so that he could cut through the remaining deceptions of life, understand the fullness of the ministry that he could render, and become and feel the magnitude of his being in its completeness. So think about that. Here is a being who is not required by life to return to this schoolroom. He had graduated. He had done enough work to graduate from this schoolroom. He chose to come back. And even with the attainment he had, just coming back into the atmosphere of this planet and the degradation of the accumulation of all the destructive energy here, it took him almost 2 more decades to cut through it all, to be capable of rendering the ministry that he did. So think about that. Think about what you have to do and what he did, and the enormous effort it still took on his part to be capable of conducting his ministry. And then that only lasted a couple years before the people executed him. Or attempted to, anyway. So that is what we need to aspire to. I wanted to convey this so you could think about it. And just focus on trying to attain a fraction of what he did. That's all we need to be doing. And just forget all the other distraction. The world of distraction is constantly pulling upon us, make us feel like we gotta go do this, that, and the other thing. when what we really need is more time in the silence. Sitting in the silence is where you will be taught. That's where the most powerful teachings can occur, is in the perfect stillness of being, where you shut out the incessant demands of the body, the incessant demands of the world. And you can do this through meditation. You can do this through sacrament. And you can do this by finding a true teacher of the light and being in their presence. There's 3 paths, or a combination of all 3, which has been the case for me. That's it, really. I just wanted to share that thought about Jesus' ministry and how we just need to be more like him. He's the highest example we have in this land. But at the same time, everybody needs to shake away that usurping that religion has taken of him. And that may be hard for some people, depending upon what kind of things have been instilled in them in their life through family or friends or priests or whatever. Religion has usurped so much truth of his life. And you have to cut all that away to get to the very essence of him. You don't need the Bible. Just find his sermons on the Mount. In fact, one of the best things you could even read about Jesus is if you find a little book by an author called Emmett Fox. And Emmett Fox wrote a breakdown of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount from my 20s or 30s. 1920s or 1930s when he did this. And Emmett Fox was a person who was on the path. He understood the practicality of what Jesus was teaching. And his distillation of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount is fabulous. It's a small book. It's one of the few I recommend to people to ever read. Because that's all you really need to know about Jesus. His Sermon on the Mount was his master class to the people. He provided a scientific and mathematical path, tried to lay it before people clearly. If you can see through the words, and Emmett Fox helps with that distillation. He does a great job in bringing forth that very essence of Jesus in that sermon. There's 2 more points I want to make about Jesus' life, and I've touched upon this one too previously, and that is when I say you do not need the Bible, it is because there's been too much lost in all the translations of the Bible. There's been too much changed in the Bible. It's not the unadulterated truth of life by any means. It has come down through the hands of many unillumined of mankind. It has been translated and it has been corrupted over time, willfully and sometimes ignorantly, because of the priesthood wishing to maintain power over the people. You couldn't just have what Jesus taught being disseminated to people directly. Otherwise, there'd be absolutely no need for a religion or a priesthood. Do you understand that? Jesus did not teach religion. He did not teach about priesthood. He did not teach about creating a church. He did none of this. He left no written works intentionally because he knew what mankind would do to it. They would corrupt what he left. They corrupted what he left already. But we should be grateful that so much has come through unadulterated from his life. But it is not to be found in the Bible. There's still truth in the Bible, don't get me wrong. But it's not worth the effort trying to disseminate little fractions of mystic truth that's been mistranslated and lost in parables and from different ages and times. You don't need to do that. There are other great works of God's hand already upon us with perfect clarity for this day and age. So I wanted to make that point about there's a reason why he did not leave us any written works of his own hand. It wasn't that he wasn't incapable of doing that if he wanted to. But he knew what would happen over time. And it would have been worse if he had written something. And the other point I want to make is about judgment. And just like other things in life, there is a proper use of judgment and an improper use of judgment. The wrong use of judgment is when we use it to condemn others. When we use our judgment and condemn people as not being redeemable or unworthy. But the proper use of judgment is a form of bearing witness to reality. You have to be capable of using judgment in its proper manner. It's not a condemning of life to an unredeemable consequence. It's just seeing life with eyes wide open. And this is what Jesus was doing when he walked into the temple and upturned the money lenders' tables, opened the cages and freeing the animals being sold for sacrifice on the altar. And when he lectured the Pharisees and the priests and all these individuals conducting this falsehood, this religious and spiritual falsehood under the guise of some form of redemption for the people. He called this out with ferocity and laid bare the truth in that moment. Just imagine him walking in there and flipping over the tables of the money lenders and letting animals free and speaking with utter ferocity about the lies and the bullshit that was going on in the temple. He was not condemning them with this judgment, but he was judging what is false from what is true and calling it out in perfect clarity. That's proper use of judgment. And you have to use judgment in this manner upon yourself and your ways of thinking and feeling and conducting of one's behaviors in life. And you can use it upon everything you see in life to help you steer clear of falsehood. But again, it's not a condemning of life. Everything is redeemable. But the same thing that went on in those times is still occurring today. Thank you, my loved ones.